Okay.
All right, I'd like to call the Gurnee Village Board Committee of the Whole meeting August 28, 2017 to order. Roll call, please, Andy.
Hood.
Here.
Thorstensen.
Here.
Jacobs.
Here.
Ross.
Here.
Garner.
Here.
Thomas.
Present.
6 present.
All right, it's a Committee of the Whole meeting, so we have no formalities, and we're going to move right into a engaging presentation on our strategic plan, our progress report number 3.
Sure. So when we got rolling with the strategic plan initiative, a couple of years ago, we said we would come back and report twice a year to the village board and the public and those that participated in the process as far as where we're at. So the first report was back in June of last year, and then we had a second report that was incorporated into the budget process. So this is report number 3, so we're going to walk through this tonight. Got all the pertinent people here that are going to each report on the initiative that's they're mainly responsible for in their area. So we'll go through a couple intro slides here just as reminders and then roll through. So as I said, report twice a year. This is to make sure that it stays out in front of the public, stays at the forefront. Are we on this slide?
It works.
Stays at the forefront of department operations and the forefront of village operations, obviously. And then we'll email it to those that participate in the process, throw it on the village website. Jack will get it out on social media. So format remains the same. So you've got each initiative as a project lead, an area that's responsible for it. We've got kind of a timeline at the top of each page that shows our estimation of where we think we're at as far as completing the initiative, and then we've got a couple of graphics there as far as the check mark means that step's complete. The little clock is progress is being made currently, and then the X is no progress to date. So the PowerPoint tonight, basically the slides, they're super word heavy, but it's the chart on the right side of each page for each initiative. So basically just copy and pasted that chart in. So you can follow along in your book, and we'll just go through here one by one. And like I said, each of the department heads, managers here will report on the initiatives and where we're at. So. Alrighty. Oh, Scott figured it out.
All right, so to start off for discussing our communications, so the Facebook page, we launched it back in January 2016. It's currently up to 3,400 likes. It's become one of our main sources of communication, and one of the really good areas we were able to use it was during the flood. So for that 10-day span, we had dozens of posts of our own and sharing others' information. In total, we had a Facebook reach of 365,000 impressions. That's how many times it reached people's timelines through other areas. In total, we had 165,000 likes, shares, comments. So people were interacting with it. It was one of our best ways to get information out because we could put it out there and it was shared. For example, our drone shots were shared probably 2,000 times. So overall, the second part too, our YouTube channel is active, alive. We're uploading all the minutes, the meetings to the YouTube channel. We're also trying to do some more streaming stuff. I'm looking at the possibility of eventually doing live board meetings too, so that we can go live right to the source. So if people aren't able to make it, they can watch it live there. For keeping posted, we continue to try to bring in more partners. I'm trying to work with Warren Newport Library. 2 years now, they've considered it. They haven't moved forward with it. Also thinking maybe Warren Township long term, just because we have very similar audiences, so they might be a logical partner. And then, so we also have our new website. It is now live. Also, it's mobile friendly. Still in its infancy, but it was really useful for the flood. It does a good job of, relaying immediate information, and so we're working on it.
Good job, Jeff. We're getting hipper and hipper.
Just the fact that we're using the word hipper is not a good sign.
Whatever the cool word is for being current,
Cool and neat.
savvy.
Yeah, I was just going to say, that's not very hip either.
They still use fleck, is that like
That's what I just said, fleck.
fleck or fleck?
It's probably gone.
Kurt Christman.
All right, so we went through the process, first time around through the strategic planning process to develop a workforce and succession plan focusing on diversity. So we did go through that process and have that document set forth as a guiding document for us to continue to use going forward. During the budget process last year, we did utilize some worksheets that I had created just to kind of track and take a snapshot of upcoming retirements, potential changes in the workforce that were planned, and how we wanted to address those changes going forward, looking at different ways to fill the job positions. Like I said, during that process, we did use some of those plans, and with the upcoming budget process, we will continue to do the same. One of the other steps was to develop a recruitment plan. While we have been doing quite a bit of hiring, most of those processes have been through established lists, so we have not actually been doing a full recruitment of any sort. We had the consolidation with Zion, where we brought on a lot of their personnel, so that was not requiring a full recruitment plan. Plus, we have existing lists for police, fire, and public works that we've been hiring off of during this time, and our lateral entry process, which is a little bit different of a recruitment style. So, haven't gotten into a full recruitment plan. That will be something that won't necessarily ever have a check to it, because that will be something that will be continuously updated, changing, as workforce needs change, as recruitment methods need to stay up to date with, how people are looking for jobs. So that'll always be a work in progress. Same thing with the implementation. That's going to be, as time goes on, different ways to implement the plan. But staying true to the roots, making sure we do go through the process in our budgets, looking forward, 2 years, 3 years, 5 years out, what our staffing may be, ideas that we could use to fill current or potential pending vacancies will always be a part of our implementation process. And while, modifying, evaluating, revising, that is, it has an X, it really is something that's going on, an ongoing process. So, that is where we're at. So we're getting ready with the budget process coming up to do our second year of our workforce planning.
Yeah, and it seems like there's been a decent amount of retirements lately. I mean, the fire department's had 3 here in the not too long ago, one coming up this Saturday.
3 in 3 months' time. So.
Yeah, right. And then as it relates to, diversity specifically, I mean, the police department's had good luck through the lateral process, bringing on some diverse candidates. So we've made some progress in those areas compared to where we've been in the past. So that's nice to see. So.
Do we have a lateral process on the fire side as well?
Not on the fire side.
The current statutes don't allow for that to occur, so they can have experience, but it won't give them a leg up to transfer and kind of keep their position, their status intact. So they would start over. Unfortunately, they don't have the ability to do that.
Can I, before we go on, ask a question? So your bottom right quadrant had 41 out of 214 positions, or 19%, are eligible for retirement.
Correct.
So kind of looking at the whole book, and I know it's hard to kind of risk weight these initiatives throughout the whole book, but people as are, a critical component of our business. So how many of them are leadership positions?
We do have a couple of upper-level fire, sergeant, commander type positions, lieutenants, battalion chiefs. That's just a snapshot. It's not necessarily that any have even said that they're planning on retiring. That's just by age and service. If they wanted to, they could. I would say probably maybe 5% are in the top management positions. So
and
a lot
in
of
those areas, and you mentioned fire, for example, so we'll talk about fire. So in those segments, do you have enough depth in your group, that's not a loss of leadership, isn't going to be significant to you guys?
Within fire for the promotions, we have to follow a state statute and promotional act. So there's always an eligibility list out there for the next candidates for the battalion chief and lieutenant positions. So we're very deep in both those lists. The candidates that are there are very qualified. Just to sit for those exams, they have to have certain levels of schooling, certain levels of seniority. It's a very rigorous 5-part process to take that test and finish the top. I have confidence in the people sitting on those lists, the order we would have to promote in. Village Administrator Mutes just mentioned that. We're going to have a retirement next week of a gentleman with 42 years onto the village, Gary Miller. He'll be retiring Saturday. He actually started in Public Works and went. We'll be bringing forward at the end of the month a promotional spot. The individual taking the spot will have about 20 years. He still has 10 years left in his career with us, up to usually about 30. So he's eligible for retirement on Christine's matrix that says he's 20 plus years, but talking to the individual, he's planning on sticking around for minimally 5, we're guessing 10. So I feel very confident in the next steps of people to come up.
And I hate to prolong this discussion, but I'll add one more comment then. You happen to say that the majority of these are in fire, but are there any other departments that we're just not asking them for their depth of staff as well at this point?
We do have several in police, and they do have kind of an internal working plan of how they anticipate filling some of those potential vacancies down the road. Being able to put people in positions through step-up roles, through officer-in-charge roles, has been a great utilization of kind of our staff to kind of give them an opportunity to try out supervisor roles, make sure they're ready for it. Same thing in Public Works. We have step-up pay, lead maintenance worker positions. So if those were to become, higher-level supervisory, we are looking internally to develop our staff to fill those roles and make sure they're qualified to do so because they've had the experience within our organization.
Thanks.
All right. So the next one we have here is our refinement of our performance measures. So with this one, what we're doing is we're really kind of looking at how we track everything organizational wide. So this one right now, it's kind of been, the timeline's been extended for this one. We're kind of what we initially estimated it would be is probably going to get pushed back. This is going to be one that'll probably end up taking a little longer than some of the others. What we're doing is really looking at what we measure. So to start out with, been looking at right now, ICMA recently released this summer, which is the International City Managers Association. They have 80 benchmarks that they put out for how to manage your municipality, and you can compare it across the nation. So you can compare yourself to other communities and a bunch of really good metrics. So I've been kind of looking at that, and I kind of want to sit and meet with departments and really kind of compare what they have to what's out there and what would work best for us, just so we're not just measuring ourselves against ourselves, but also other communities. So that'll be a longer process, still looking at that. Hopefully once everything that's been going on kind of wraps up, we can start looking at that a little bit more. So for the next one has been our improving business processes village-wide. So what this started out with is kind of we're looking at what we're doing. One of the ways that we approached this was with the Gurnee Process Innovation Committee, so our GPIC as we call it. So this one, what we started doing with this is we met last year, started looking at a couple projects. We started out pretty small scale on some projects that we thought we could get a group and kind of try this out. So we looked at 3 things: building maintenance services, customer relationship management, and printed and paper forms, and how we purchase them. Where we're at right now, so for the building processes, right now they're really analyzing how they do things for each department, kind of getting an idea of what each department does, how they manage it. So they're working on that. The building or the customer relationship management, so the group has been meeting. They're recommending that technology will be the best solution moving forward, utilizing technology, what's out there. They've put together an RFP that should be coming in front of the board within the next month once we're done reviewing and everything's finalized. And so we should be able to go out to RFP pretty soon for that one. So that'll be a good one. Paper purchasing committee. So what they did is they looked at the two different types of paper purchasing. They looked at it and said basically that we purchase printed forms, so things like business cards, any printed material, and then we're also purchasing bulk paper. So in the line of business, what we do, this is a tiny little thing, but what it does is it allows frontline staff to really look at how we're purchasing things, what we do. So this is a good project. So there's a couple recommendations coming out of that, looking at kind of how we purchase, centralizing, trying to spend less time for staff time has been the biggest thing with this, finding out that sometimes saving a couple dollars isn't always worth it, and other times it is. So we're trying to find what the balance point is that. So that should have an option pretty soon here. So those will be reported back to the GPIC committee.
Yeah, and some of those, like the paper purchasing, I mean, it seems pretty simple and low-key, but that kind of was the plan with that, to start out with something small that staff can wrap their heads around, and then hopefully as they realize, like Jack said, researching different paper vendors for an hour to save $1 a box or something obviously isn't worth it. So getting them to realize that, and as they continue on with purchasing, think in that direction when they're working on that. So it seems simple, but you'd be surprised at how entrenched some people are with their paper suppliers and where they get paper from and stuff. So that's been interesting.
The next item is updating the fire department reporting system, more specifically looking into our EMS reporting and to meet national standards, as well as to look at it from a billing standpoint, the combination of the two. The biggest thing that we've accomplished is we went ahead and moved our billing system from over at the fire department actually into the finance department. Erica Wells is overseeing it now. It's a nice separation. We do the reporting, we code, then Erica takes it, she runs through and she goes direct with the billing area. It really makes a lot more sense. It's definitely a best practice model. We have the people who should be counting money, and people running calls. So we've really done a nice job. It's taken a lot of time to get that up in place. We're seeing the revenues definitely trend towards the positive direction. You can tell we have a very good check and balance system in place. The second half of this is the reason we wanted to go electronic is to ease up the reporting system and meet national standards. The problem is we chose a company and we were starting to customize and build out the system. Well, at the time, our federal government has changed some processes. Right now, we're having a hard time getting approval from both the state of Illinois and the federal government to meet the national reporting system that they've put in place. It kind of fell under the Affordable Care Act. People in the federal government aren't necessarily into the Affordable Care Act anymore, sure making it a little difficult. Their competitor, however, the second place of ours actually is up to date and can meet the national reporting system. We're evaluating right now. We've just started working with them a little, getting quotes to see what the conversion over the change would be. We have not met as a committee yet. The committee that we've had in place, we have the IS department, Chris and Ryan will sit on that. We have finance, Erica and Brian participate, and we have a fire department group. It looks like we're going to have to reconvene to look to how to meet these standards together. However, the good part is we have taken care of the core problem, which was the revenue. We've stabilized that. We've got a good place there. I'm feeling confident about that. And I think this is just going to take a little longer. We want to make sure we make a good decision the next time around. We made a decision the first time, so it's just going to take a little longer for us to meet this.
It is a 5-year plan. So you don't have to finish. It's a 5-year plan, so you don't have to finish everything in the first year.
Yeah, and I should have said that on the outset. I mean, there's some of these that we frankly haven't got to yet with everything else that's going on. So, I mean, you'll see a couple of those in here. That doesn't mean it's been forgotten or we're not going to work on it. It's just there's some stuff we just haven't had time to get to yet.
So the next objective is develop a plan for economic development. Any plan for that, whether it's this year, next year, 5 years, 10 years, I believe, will have as its three main components: revenue, jobs, and quality of life. So when I'm describing what we do and what our goals are here, I tend to categorize into retail and hospitality and entertainment being our main driver of revenue for this community. Manufacturing, given the marketplace for office, which is not particularly strong right now, manufacturing, advanced manufacturing being our primary source of good, living wage jobs to match the skill levels of our residents. And then in terms of quality of life, of course, that's a very broad category, so that's kind of where small business fits in. And right now, small business happens to be pretty focused on East Grand. So that first one, we will kind of put that aside because there's a whole other objective just on East Grand, so we'll deal with that in that slide. But NIPRO is a great example of the advanced manufacturing success that we like to see and the way that we like to see the process evolve. It started with a retention visit and highlighted a need that didn't even become apparent until sometime after that visit, but that had laid the groundwork. So that's pretty much a textbook case of what we like to see happen. And of course, we'll be celebrating their grand opening ribbon cutting on September 14th. So that's a great example. Because we'd like to see more NIPROs out there, I've proposed to Lake County Partners that Gurnee take the lead on offering an advanced manufacturing resource event whereby we would invite manufacturers, certainly from Gurnee, we would make a big push for that, but extend it to all of Lake County, invite the mayors from the major communities, bring in, the Small Business Development Council, the International Trade Council, the state of Illinois, the Small Business Administration, Workforce Development for Lake County, and all of the resources, the internships and grants, training grants that they offer, and basically have stations set up so that each mayor could welcome their own community, and then manufacturers could choose which of those resources they felt they had the most immediate need for, and then sort of cycle, So I think we'll get that done probably in the winter. It's been rattling around as an idea for a while. I hope we would do it by now, but we haven't. So let's put that on the next 5 year, hopefully the next 1 year of the next 5 years. But I do think to me, that's a way that, our manufacturers have very few ways to connect with each other and with their community. And I think one of the best defenses we have against movement north of the border is if they know that the resources are right here and they know how to find them. So that's something that I think is a high priority. Obviously, public transportation speaks to all the sectors, retail, office, industrial, service, and they all have labor recruiting challenges right now. So I think our ultimate goal is probably some form of bus rapid transit. And as I understand it, and we'll let the more technical folks describe it if you're interested, but that all of our signals along Grand Avenue are already equipped. That if the buses had the right equipment to override the signals, they would certainly be second to public safety vehicles, but they could override and get through those intersections faster. So that's the ultimate goal, and the mayor has made PACE aware that that's our ultimate goal. But there's lots of steps we can take in the interim. Namely adding stops where there's a concentration of ridership, and that would be, like in our case, for instance, Tri-State Corporate Park or Gurnee Mills, places where there's a lot of employers. If we can figure out that there's enough of those and verify where they're coming from to pace the satisfaction, they may consider adding another stop, improving the stops we do have so that they're more comfortable and usable, such as the shelter that was added at Washington and 21 recently, and another one planned for Hunt Club in conjunction with the new development with Chick-fil-A and things that are going on there, and the Sam's Club gas station. And just the major Walmart and Sam's Club are pretty major consumer generators of traffic. So working with PACE we have their agreement that if we can document that need, that they'll look at adding new stops. CoStar is a subscription service, commercial real estate, that's really the best of the bunch. None of them is perfect, because they do rely on landowners to put in their properties, but we subscribe to CoStar, which puts us on par with all the commercial brokers out there. We have the same information they do, so that if a small business or small owner, wants to list their property in the case of the owner, or a small business is looking, we can print off a very customized report. What are the other tenants in the building? What rents are they paying? Here's a map of the property, here's the zoning, and just deliver that. So, and the new website, of course, provides another vehicle to do that. So I'm finding that CoStar is a good source, really has a lot of value, and as we look over time, we'll be able to see how our vacancies have changed. So that's kind of an umbrella service, just like public transportation. It serves all our sectors. There's not one sector that benefits more from that. The last one is purely retail. ICSC is the International Council of Shopping Centers. We are represented at every major event that they have. The big one for Chicago is coming up at the end of September. We host a booth. It's a great opportunity to reconnect with brokers who are representing the tenants that we'd like to see in town, developers who maybe haven't thought about Gurnee for a while. Mayor Kovarik is going to be on a panel this year addressing right-sizing and adapting of retail in this challenging environment, basically talking about how public and private can work together to move deals forward in a challenging retail marketplace, very timely, and also a great way to give Gurnee visibility to the audience of that panel. I think that probably is it.
I'm sorry, can I ask a question? Do we pay Lake County Partners a stipend?
We do, and 3,400, something like
It's around
that.
$3,500 is a fee.
I was just wondering, I know we've talked about this in the past, some type of a metric from them to help us with our business retention, maybe?
They are pretty aggressive in helping us attract and retain anything but retail.
Correct.
They're very good at industrial manufacturing. In fact, when we've had something like that before Ellen, we didn't even try to deal with it ourselves. We just got Lake County. So they're really the things outside of retail. Retail, we tend to handle it better ourselves. So yeah,
They hire a third party. One service of theirs I do find very helpful. They hire a third party appointment maker, for lack of a better term. And they, when a manufacturer receives a call from this entity, it sounds like they're calling from Lake County Partners, and they set up a retention appointment, and then Lake County makes me aware of it, and we go together on it. So it's handled very professionally. They think that they're hearing from a government agency, which they are effectively. It's just through a contractor, and then it gives. And it's very. I will have to say it is very time consuming to make those appointments. So having that service is very nice. We still don't get a lot of them because they have to be very persistent. People don't want to talk to government. It's a funny thing, but it is helpful to have that.
All right, thank you. The next one is updating the village financial policies, and really this is a goal to keep us in line with best practices from the GFOA, the IGFOA, and those kind of organizations here. This is one of those that got pushed off a little bit from my original intention with the financial software. It became apparent through that process that there was enough process changes that it would be good to get some experience in the new software and incorporate some of those things into some of the policies, particularly the purchasing policy is one that sticks out. But there are a couple of policies that we've already done, the investment policy and the pension funding policy. Those two have been updated in the last couple of years here. We are working on the next ones. The remaining ones, I do have some progress, have made some progress on updating a few of them. But the next steps really are to get those drafts out to the staff, and then for the staff review during the budget process, and then bring those back to the village board during the multi-year forecast budget process, somewhere in there, for formal adoption with the fiscal year 19 budget. The next one we had actually moved up a little bit here. So this was. Developed a multi-year financial plan, which we had, I think when this was updated, we had just presented for the first time. But the backside of that was the contingency plan. If you remember, this was like the resource interruption plan, where we actually put metrics in place to trigger us to do certain things. One, it was 2 consecutive quarters of negative budget variance and a negative year-to-year actual variance. And the last time that happened was in 2008. So that was a pretty good marker to use as a benchmark. So I have tracking on that. There's a little spot in the quarterly report that shows where we're at with that. So we'll know when it happens, when and if. Hopefully it doesn't, but if it does happen, we will be prepared with, on the staff level, a list of kind of contingency scenarios that we can then take a look at and make adjustments as necessary. So, but we did complete that one. I think last December. And then the pension funding policy, as I mentioned, this is one that we did update, and there's a few different factors that go in here. We did have to move this one up as well. Wanted to get it in front of the software because we knew that would take a bunch of time, but also it was a requirement of GASB, so we were actually early implementers for this policy. And what this does is set in policy the assumptions we're going to use to be more conservative than required by the Department of Insurance to fund our pensions. So that was passed with actually it was last June right before the audit was finalized. So that one is complete.
Brian, are we completely switched over onto the new financial software now? No more dummy screens?
Sure, yeah, this would probably be a good time to update everyone on where we're at with the financial software. Where we're at right now, financials went live, so financials would being general ledger, accounts payable, accounts receivable. Those modules went live May 1st. Payroll went live July 1st. And then the only remaining thing we have left is utility billing or water billing. and that will take us to go live next May 1st. Obviously, there's a ton of data in utility billing, so that will be the most data-intensive conversion we have. We have started it. It's just going to take some time to convert history and things like that. So,
Do we have to do the conversion, or?
we essentially get the data out of HTE, and then Munis takes it and then uploads it into the new system through a process. They have to write scripts to be able to upload it into the new software. So.
180 practically from where we were not that long ago. That's a huge step for us.
Yeah, and with like the payroll, we have all online capabilities for employees to go look at historical documents. We also have an accounts payable portal for vendors to go look at checks, and then obviously the utility billing will enhance the customer portal when that goes live. So.
Good job.
Thank you.
Thank you. So the board is very familiar with, we've been talking a lot about East Grand lately, so I'll just hit what I think are the highlights. The overarching issue that I think is just important to note is that just the very mere fact of us shining a light, as we did last year with the ULI study, even though we don't have any intention, any intention of adopting every single recommendation, we don't agree with everything it said, excuse me, just the mere fact that we did that, I think, has got people talking, and they truly believe that the village is serious. So it's money pretty well spent, in my opinion, and so as that moves forward, I think we just should feel good about that was a good decision. So because of that study being done, and because of the fact that this area has been studied to death, we decided not to pursue the market analysis, which was the first item. That would be a traditional follow-up to that kind of a study. We decided we probably didn't need it at this point. At this point, given what we learned through that and what we sort of knew already, which was that rents are probably not high enough to support wholesale redevelopment, that we should really focus on property owners who, want to work with us, want to invest, and find those opportunities. And there are really just a couple areas that were sort of no-brainers that we didn't need any study to tell us. One was that the community was tired of seeing a vacant handy-andy. So that was what turned out to be a fairly, easy conversation. I mean, we invited them in. We said, what will it take? And after 19 years, they're actually they're in business, and they have given us every indication to believe that they'll be going forward with. We've not seen them yet, but they've told us that they will be submitting plans for an interior climate-controlled self-storage facility. So it's nice to see that property, back in use. The other item that we didn't need a market analysis to tell us was that restaurants are catalytic in an environment like this. It's most of the retail and service are going to stay neighborhood retail and service, but restaurants always have a amplifying effect. So, coffee shops, bakeries, restaurants, that type of thing. So, and with an emphasis on independently owned. So we have reached out to several independent owners in town to see if that's something that they'd like to consider as an expansion strategy. So in doing so, we focused on these key larger property owners, U-Haul being one, the owner of the former Welton Market shopping center being another. And so when we find, and he's been particularly, solicitous of the village's input and really conveying that he wants to be part of the bringing up of this area, the revitalization. So when we find owners that have that attitude, want to work with us, they're going to find us to be very, easy to work with and anxious to work with them. His plans include, he's got 4,000 square feet on the front. He's looking at building a standalone and also a facade renovation. So he's a good example of someone we like to work with. Several of the merchants, as you know, have been meeting regularly. I think this is now becoming a pretty established committee. Karen and I have had a good time, getting to know them and them getting to know each other. We have a group of about 20 now that have either come in and out at various times and met with us. 3 of those were in the Gurnee Days parade. I think at least 2 of them for the first time ever. And that was a real thrill, I think, for Gurnee Garden Center in particular. Had never been in the Gurnee Days parade. So that's fun. It's nice to see them working together. As you may have seen on Facebook or in the administrator's report memo, we have kicked off a $1,000 giveaway, which means we're doing $50 a week for the next 20 weeks. And the idea there is to keep people coming back with the opportunity to win cash just by coming to East Grand. And we hope that keeps the traffic, the right kind of traffic coming in their door. So I think, as we go forward, there will be opportunities where I'll probably be back to you talking about, hopefully, a user that's interested in going, and most likely we may be talking about some incentives, but just so that you know, that'll only be on a case-by-case basis and only where we view there as being catalytic potential, where, that type of business will spur activity that's going to be beneficial to the whole corridor.
Jack, would you like to do this one?
Between the two of us?
Yes.
Okay. So for the Blue Ribbon Commission, as you guys know, they were ahead of you about a month ago. So the group had met over a course of a year, developed a list of 30 recommendations. And so what we're doing now, so the group is actually wrapped up, but the recommendations are online. And what the group is really trying to do from now is really try to meet with stakeholders in the area. So the Lake County organization, or the Lake County Department of Transportation, the state of Illinois, whenever there's any opportunity for like an open house or public comment, the group is staying pretty active and trying to get out there to share what was presented. It'll come back before the board probably in the next couple meetings for final adoption. But they're moving forward, or they have the recommendations out there. The GIS division right now is working on an interactive map too, so you'll be able to click and see kind of what the recommendations are, and then Scott and his staff can use it and implement whenever we have opportunities.
Yeah, and the completion of that report from the Blue Ribbon Committee is really helping to guide staff in our work effort. One of the things that just came out of the Blue Ribbon Committee was a pedestrian way in the Christie Thompson Park area. Coincidentally, we had a drainage improvement they were working on in that vicinity. First step was to clear out a portion of the right-of-way. So knowing that that was in the report as a desired pedestrian connection point, we were able to move forward with clearing of the brush and the weeds in that area and kind of open it up so we can get some survey data. And there's a very good possibility we'll be able to make that connection here, years ahead of what the Blue Ribbon Committee was really expecting it to occur, just because we're going to dovetail it with the drainage improvement. So we'll be digging a hole on one side of the right-of-way and installing a pedestrian path on the other with minimal additional cost. The machines are already going to be there, so win-win.
Exactly the way it's supposed to work.
And the other big project that we did have budgeted for this year was the Knowles Road connection. We have preliminary engineering underway on that. Heat of the construction season, that'll be a fall project for us, I expect. And I'm sure we'll be back before you in a couple of months here to put that out to bid.
And Jack, can you help me remember to get the meeting scheduled with Sandy, Steve, and Vance so we can figure out if we can partner with the county or with the county to push some of these initiatives that are a little beyond our scope, but that we may be able to dovetail with. But I want to present it to them, get some buy-in on some of the bigger things. And then we're going to take it to CMAC too. Yeah, I think let's get the county done first, and then move on to the next one. So one of the Mondays.
Yeah.
So for improving flooding and stormwater management, this one was timely. I've had some really good divine intervention this last quarter here. We've had a significant increase in the number of residents in the special flood hazard area associated with the Des Plaines River that are interested in participating in the grant and buyout programs that the Village of Gurnee has participated in. As of the writing of this, we had 2 that we had incorporated into the buyout program that have flood insurance, that taken damages. As of this morning, I've actually got 4 interested parties. So just in the course of the last week and a half, we're obviously drumming up a lot more interest out there and getting the word out that the Village of Gurnee is, still interested in purchasing these properties that have flood damages, with the sole intent of removing them from the special flood hazard area. So we are going to continue to participate in that program, as the mayor has been, preaching to all the news outlets that listen. We've acquired, 26 properties here in the last 20 years. So the Village of Gurnee is making great strides. I'm not going to say that the flooding was easy by any stretch of the imagination, but with 26 fewer properties to provide protection and emergency services and sandbags for, it definitely was a little bit easier this time than it has been in prior years. This is the multi-year capital improvement plan enhancement. So this is basically assigning metrics to become more proactive in our capital improvement planning process. No work has really been performed on this strategic item at this time.
All right, now to Public Works. All right, we're in item number 1. We're just in year 2 of an increase in that light item for our traffic control signs. We did this a couple of years ago. Back in 2013, we had to abide by the MUTCD to get all of our signs in compliance with reflectivity. So we are in year number 4 of that right now. We worked with engineering on item number 2 to coordinate all of our street lighting, but in the original plan, we were going to include traffic control signs with that, and we took them out because the cost was a lower cost, so we absorbed that in our own line item. This year was the second year we've worked with engineering on this. We are replacing 225 street lights in town. These are all LEDs. At this time right now, we have replaced almost 922 out of 1,737 streetlights, and that's going to continue as the project wears on. Lights and signs, that we talked about that at the MUTCD, we are in year 4. Right now, we have 3 areas left, and those are all out west. It's all in the new sections of town. We have replaced over 1,600, almost 1,700 signs out of 3,600. And those are just what we found that needed to be replaced by the MUTCD. So that's a multi-year program. That'll take us probably about another 2, maybe 3 years to complete that project. EAB treatments, we've started this in 2011. We had 3,300 trees, a little over 3,300. We are now down to 2,209 trees. We still treat biannually instead of every 3rd year. So we are treated this year on the west side of I-94, and next year we'll move back to the east side to take care of that. Item number 5, because of the EAB treatment, we're trying to diversify our forestry. So these are all the updated numbers by percentage of different varieties of trees. The other on that side would be all of our ornamental trees that don't fit in a category. So we're moving along pretty well with that. We have 11,632 trees in town, Parkway trees, to date. Tree planting this past year was increased, which we will continue to $64,000, and we have planted 95 trees so far this year, with another 25 coming late fall. So we're roughly around the 120 mark, give or take, every year that we try to plant. This year, through EAB treatments, we have removed 80 trees through our EAB treatment program. So you can see that number is going a little down, but I think over time our ash trees will be eliminated from the village. Item number 7, this is a program. This will be a multi-year program. We are replacing older hydrants, outdated, older than 1970. We are in year 2 of that. We replaced 15 last year. We are replacing 10 this year, and that's a multi-year program. That'll take us to the next 2 years, and then thereafter we'll continue with that program as well. This year, the village painting contractor will finish year 5 of our hydrant painting contract. They are 3/4 of the way done with this year, so that'll be complete. So that took us 5 years to do. Going back to look at year 1, they usually say you try to come back every 6 or 7 years to repaint. Our year 1 hydrants look fantastic, so they're hanging on pretty well with all the weather and stuff over there. So they've done a great job for us so far. Public Works this year, the Utility Division is starting a flow testing program, and this is part of the ISO rating. The water system is 40%, accounts for 40% of the ISO rating. We have to do a flow testing, so we're doing it every 5 years instead of every 10 years. So this is our first time we're doing it, data to get them, because I think ISO is coming up pretty quick here. So far we have done, how many hydrants have we done? 1,120 out of 2,553, and we'll be done with that in the next couple months. And then the last one we do yearly. So annually, when we don't do flow testing, we also do annual hydrant flushing every year. It happens every spring, so that's a continuous process every year. All of this that we do, all of the maintenance stuff that we do, as you guys recall, we developed, or we have a program called CityWorks. So all of the data that we do for anything that we touch, any asset we touch in the village, is documented in CityWorks. Labor, costs, everything. So every asset, everything we track those costs. We also are able to do benchmarking with that. So we're waiting to work with Jack going forward to pull benchmarks and start with that as well. So just, we got questions. So any questions from that point?
Are our hydrants ending up being different colors with the new ones?
No, they're all red.
All of ours are red?
Are red with
saw some blue
blue
ones out
caps.
there along Washington Street.
Somebody made a comment.
Jala's got a couple blue ones along Washington Street. Those are Jala.
Theirs are light blue if you see them.
Yep,
somebody else's, correct. If they're yellow, I believe they're counties.
I didn't jump in on this, right?
No.
I didn't know the answer.
There's a couple down by the middle school on Washington that are new that popped up with the Jala water main extension through there.
So does Jala have to have its own fire hydrants? To put out what's fires?
They don't, they just for flushing.
Oh.
And you go to a hydrant like that, pretty much yeah. Those are the high pressure feed mains for the community, so you don't want to get into those.
Right.
And this item here, this is enhancing communications via Wi-Fi, open data, and fiber. This is a multi-year, long-term play for the Village of Gurnee. The one that I've been involved with this year with Christopher's help has been fiber optic connection between the Village Hall facility and the Fire Station 1 facility on Old Grand Avenue. Christopher recognized that the township had, there's a high school there, and they had a need for a fiber optic connection out to the football field as well. So we had come up with a game plan to approach the high school about partnering with them to basically, we're going to go right by their front door anyway. We said, hey, can we put an additional conduit in here? Would this work for you guys? And they were ecstatic to have talked to us about that and very excited to participate in that. So we are in the final design processes with those right now. All the permitting has been completed with the state of Illinois, the Army Corps of Engineers, Illinois Department of Natural Resources, the county, the other part of the county. I'm sure there's a threatened and endangered species for some sort of minnows out there too. So it's we have to cross basically the tributary to the Des Plaines River. So there's a lot involved with that, and that's all been taken care of. We are working on the final. We'll get it out to bid here probably in the next 6 weeks. Here I'll be back before you, and then we'll be partnering with the Township High School for that connection as well. In the future, obviously, the Village of Gurnee is going to leverage those relationships with the other agencies. If we see an opportunity to partner with somebody, because putting the pipe in the ground is really the expensive part. Adding the fiber optics after the fact is very inexpensive. So if we can find additional partners to spread that cost around, that'll be beneficial for all the parties involved. So we recognize that, and we're going to be pursuing that aggressively in the future.
Thank you. We talk about the visitor-oriented policing team. One of our objectives was to add additional staffing to that, police officers of that team, to give us an increased presence in the retail and entertainment and the business areas of town. The challenge in staffing that has been the challenge in keeping up with staffing with the department. Other functions need to obviously be staffed first before we put the additional people into the visitor-oriented policing team. So patrol and investigations and other essential functions need to have be fully staffed before additional personnel can be moved into this unit. So progress has been a little bit slower than originally intended. We have assigned 2 officers to that team, and we will be by the end of the year. November is a timeline that we've established based on our recruitment and training that's happening now, to where we'll have a 3rd person assigned in November. So that is our plan with that. It should be completed the next time we get together.
Chief, can I ask you a quick question on that? Does that include Gurnee Mills?
It does. The visitor policing team does. Gurnee Mills is part of their responsibility. There are 2 officers that are permanently assigned. The 4 school resource officers are part of this team in the summertime as well. So this is staff in addition to those officers.
So does that help in terms of potential peak? Yeah, I don't know Gurnee Mills peak time. I'm just thinking if you're ramping up, adding a 3rd, could that help near the holidays?
Absolutely. They will be in place to definitely help around the holidays. If you think this is an oversimplification, but if you think of our patrol and investigations as more of a reactive, we're responding to department needs, to village needs, that visitor-oriented policing team has the ability to be much more proactive. So responding to specific needs. Gurnee Days, our visitor-oriented policing team was all over that. Black Friday at Gurnee Mills, you'll see our visitor-oriented policing team will take the lead on that detail. So they respond situationally to things that are happening and can be proactive, where when staffing is lower, we tend to move into a more reactive posture.
Thanks.
Okay, comprehensive land use plan. Last year about this time, the village board authorized a contract with Halcyon Levine Associates to implement an updated comprehensive land use plan. We got started in earnest late fall last year, October. We held our first kickoff meeting. Then over the winter, we had some stakeholder meetings and open houses with our planning and zoning board. As we hit our busy season this spring and summer, our activities slowed down a little bit. However, this fall we're going to be picking it back up again. We're currently working on reviewing their existing condition survey. That's a lot of the background historical digging through, doing the analysis of our housing stock, of our employment trends, a lot of our physical assets here in the village. So we're reviewing that right now. We've got a portion of our comments back to them and looking for a redraft on a portion of that. And then we'll get into the meat of the plan, whereby it creates an implementation policy, where we want to go, what we want to see, as well as developing all the maps that go along with it. We're still hoping to get this completed yet this calendar year, so you should be seeing something back in front of the Planning and Zoning Board mid-fall, and then hopefully getting it to you for a formal adoption by the end of the calendar year.
Dave, excuse me, how much land is ripe for development in the village?
Based upon our existing boundaries, we're probably 93 to 95% built out at this point. So we don't have a lot of large tracts. What we're seeing, as evidenced around Gurnee Mills, for instance, we're seeing redevelopment, we're seeing infill development, all the little donut holes that we have in town that have been difficult to serve in the past. Those are the ones that we're kind of concentrating in how they will fit in with what we've got around. So it's we're kind of changing from large tracts of developable land to redevelopment and infill development with this next plan.
Thank you.
The next item is researching opportunities for shared communication dispatch center. We've celebrated this one quite a bit in front of the board when we went live with Zion Police and Fire, as well as Beach Park. The part that we've also as a committee looked at is lessons learned. We want to continue. We see there's future expansion within our dispatch center available. However, we've realized that we need to look at timelines a little bit differently. Technology, as much as it's our friend, there is a lot of hoops to jump through. I feel like we are definitely providing a very high level of service to Beach Park and Zion right now. We've got our primary system. We still have a fair amount of work to do to build the secondary and the redundancies in place. But at the same time, we are out. I know Chief Woodside, myself, whenever we're out amongst our peers in the fire and police departments, we're always talking to people, looking for the proper opportunity for a good partner and a good fit. We continue to communicate with other departments out there, but we're not trying to force anyone into a position. We're really looking for a good strategic partner. We do currently have a few we're working with and talking with. However, we do see it at least a year down the line before we'd bring someone again live. We have a lot of things to get in place and cleaned up. We need to do that. But at the same time, we are not against talking to other people. We are always looking for other people. We continue to do that. At the same time, we still have a person sitting on the county board. The county still continues to look at communications in a larger scope, looking county-wide. 10 years, 15, 20 years down the line, there's going to be next generations and more equipment and more of that. We are continuing to keep one of our representatives on that as well and looking for the future, what dispatch is going to turn to in the county.
Bring you up to date on e-citation. That is a program that we're looking at. It's actually a county-wide initiative, and this is a process that would eliminate much of the paper involved in writing of citations, whether that be traffic tickets or parking tickets or ordinance violations. Whatever the citations are that a police officer is writing, this system would be computerized. A printed copy would be produced for the person receiving the ticket, and ideally, everything other than that would be handled electronically. It would be transmitted from the squad car to our records department, and then from our records department to court. So there's a number of moving parts that go along with that. I say it's a county-wide initiative. It was a request for proposal was asked for by the Lake County Chiefs of Police Association. 2 providers were identified through that process. We have been to demonstrations and interviewed and reviewed those products. And we have also invited PSSI, who is our CAD records management system provider, to put together a proposal because they have provided a similar service in other states to others that they provide service to. This would be the first time that they've done this in Illinois. So that is the progress that we have made to this point. One of the final steps that needs to take place in order for the records to be transmitted from our records department to the court is the approval of the 19th Circuit Chief Justice. That has not been achieved yet. This is another example of where it's good to be early but not first, because some of the departments that are positioned to do this immediately are being stopped by the fact that it has not received court approval yet. They're being meticulous, I'll just say, in that process. So given the fact that we're taking a little additional time to evaluate vendors and the court is yet to approve this, we're probably not going to be on our timeline of having this implemented by December. This will likely be pushed off into the next calendar year. But it's something that's a high priority. It's a very important initiative, and it's one that's going to save significant person hours in our records department managing the entry of those traffic citations. Let's see. And then moving on to the body-worn cameras. This is one that you've walked along with us through this whole process, and I'm pleased to say that this is one that we can mark completed. On March 1st, we completed all of the training and implementation of the body cameras. So every one of our officers assigned to patrol in a street function, their detectives, are all have been issued and have been wearing the body cameras since March 1st. They have been received very well. The technology is working extremely well. Evidence.com, which is the cloud manager of the evidence, has been very efficient in allowing us to view and redact when necessary for FOIA and transmit those as evidence to the courts. Our local prosecutor and the state's attorney's office are receiving the electronic files well. So by all accounts, a few months in after full implementation, this has been extremely successful.
And can I just ask, the officers are all cool with the body cameras and that kind of thing too?
Very well received.
Okay.
I think in general, from the very beginning, there was no resistance, no strong resistance to this at any point. But now that the officers are wearing them, they're comfortable with them. Any of the unknown that was a concern is no longer an issue at all. These officers recognize that this is, first of all, they're not worried about people seeing the way that they do their jobs, and they know that this is an objective record that is going to help them far more than do anything else.
And also the tasers, your use at Gurnee days, I don't know if everybody else knows that just the click disseminated any...
That can be a very effective deterrent even without deploying it. That's true. We did see some of that.
In a couple of incidents during Gurnee days, all they did was click and everybody was happy to walk away.
Yes. It's a very effective tool. Thank you for that as well.
I love one of the people that walked away.
I love the story, right?
That's what I thought, yeah. Thanks for not pulling the trigger, is that what you're saying?
Chief, can I borrow one to take home for use on my kid?
I'm sorry?
Can I borrow one to take home for use on my kid?
That's not currently a program we have available, but we can talk about that after the meeting.
Rental fee. You get rental income.
Rental and royalties.
Okay, this 5.1 is a tad duplicative of the one that we discussed earlier, so I might spare you this one unless there's any questions. This just highlights our continued work with PACE, their services to Six Flags as an example of how they serve major employment centers. That continued this year. It was debuted last year. And the rest I think we've discussed. I do think we'll see the Hunt Club shelter going in yet this year, so you may see that coming up pretty soon. Okay, Jack, if you don't mind going on to the next one. So the small business, sort of being that quality of life factor, where, we've got revenue, we've got jobs, and they certainly fulfill both of those, but probably your strongest argument for small business is quality of life. The new website has provided us with some nice opportunities, a nice impetus to do what we really should be doing, which is to serve, I think, our most valuable role, especially with small business, with all business, but especially small, because they're Jack and Jills of all trades. They're doing things on their own. They don't have huge marketing departments or legal staffs. Probably our biggest value to them is to be a conduit of information about how they can work with the village, and then to amplify their marketing efforts so that their customers become more aware of what what they're doing. So if we can fulfill that role, and of course the website provides us lots of nice opportunities to do that, then we're headed in the right direction. So some of the things that we've got planned are an update of the new business handbook, and I think we may expand this. It's a very nice, I have to give kudos to community development. This was a very nice publication they put together a few years ago. It's great in pretty much in its format. We'll add to it probably to make it an existing, not just new business, but as you continue to be here and grow, what do you need to know? One of the things they might need to know would be, how do we, if we want to have a special event in our parking lot, how do we do that? So we just called that out as an example of something that we've heard businesses asking for, and those will be incorporated into this business handbook, how to do business in Gurnee, and that'll be on the website as we go forward, fall and winter. That's targeted. The independent restaurant guide, I'm sure you often get the same question that we do. Mayor and I have heard the question. We have so many chains in town. We have over 100 chain restaurants. Where do I find a good independent restaurant? Well, there are 31 of them, and they're all in the independent restaurant guide, which we will now from here on out update every year and distribute widely. The village website has had this feature for a while, but we're improving it with the new website. It's given us a reason to. All businesses in town are searchable by type, like sportswear, apparel, that pet store, that type of thing, and by area. If you just want to see all the businesses around, 21 and Grand, you can do that. The Gurnee's got a Facebook page, of course, is our social media outlet primarily, where we amplify what businesses are doing. We share their events, we share their posts, their specials. It gives us quite a bit of latitude, whereas with the village Facebook page, we have to be, pretty careful about what we're sharing and that it's relevant to the entire community. With the business Gurnee's Got It page, we have quite a bit of flexibility and therefore can share a lot of what businesses are doing. Lake County Restaurant Week will happen again in 2018. I believe it's early March. Not sure of the date. Cheryl, do you know? Early March, right? Yeah. And that has been a nice opportunity for some of those independent restaurants. We made a big deal of Small Business Saturday last year, and we'll do so again. We tied it into the holiday train and got close to 20 participants. And I think we'll be able to do that again. And of course, this year we're redirecting some of our small business promotional efforts toward East Grand, but we'll still do a village-wide Small Business Saturday. That's important to keep that going.
Building Walton Plaza. We are farther along than we've ever been, and I'm happy to say that we've pretty much finished up all the expensive Scott work at this point. I've got a couple other things that are associated with Old Grand Avenue itself, but that's actually more on the street side of things. There's nothing really, it's not coming out of the Walton Plaza budget, if you will. So we'll have that Old Grand area kind of cleaned up here before the end of the season, and it's going to look very different here soon. But so this last quarter, we got the sign installed. We had the pavers installed. All the hardscaping is done. We had a flood, so that was a good test to see that it does still flood out there. So the landscaping around the sign has been completed. We've got the decorative boulders that were just dispatched out to that area. So things are moving along very nicely. I'm happy to report as of this afternoon, I actually took a look out there this afternoon when it was still not raining, and the wisteria is doing just wonderfully. It's really, really taken off. So as expected, a couple of years of growth on that, and that pergola is going to be just amazing in the spring. So we're looking forward to that. So we made great progress. We have some park benches on order at this point, so we're expecting those in here in the next few weeks, I believe, and those will be installed out there around the pergola and in a couple other areas in the area. So as we move forward, it'll be kind of doing the wrap-up little items, more of the landscaping and touchy-feely stuff out there that we committed to doing. It's just nice to get all the hardscaping stuff done, because that's a lot of money is invested in that, and it doesn't seem like a lot's getting done. But getting that infrastructure in the ground is really giving us the foundation to build on. So thanks to Trustee Ross for all your help.
Ross, Cheryl has nurtured that like it is her own child, and taken care of it, and worked very hard with Scott and done a phenomenal job. It's just going to be just so different from any other park, and so special for a very special man. So thank you to both of it.
From Public Works. A lot of help.
No,
A lot of help.
Every employee contributed, and that, again, that's a testament. You did it from your hearts for Dick, and he knows that. So it will be a very special place when it's all said and done. But thank you, thank you, thank you.
Last one, not much to report on. So this is one of those ones that we really haven't got to yet. This is, obviously Chris, Ellen, and Scott play a big role into this. And with 911 consolidation in East Grand and the construction season, this is one that just we haven't had time to dedicate to it yet. So we'll see. We'll have some more report in the future, but as of right now.
We have 4 years.
Same.
You know, one of the things I noticed tonight in making notes, I kept thinking of one thing. There's like a consistent thread every single one of these projects. I wish I had a Purple Heart. Because honestly, none of these I mean, you truly are the enabler of all of these projects. No matter how great the idea is, all the project, all that, you really are the one who like gets it across the finish line with the technology. And we are so technically savvy now. And I know it's a great team and everything, but there is technology has made so many things possible just in the last 5 years that we didn't even dream about 12 years ago. Kind of hoped to get rid of dummy screens and stuff, but thank you, Chris.
The most gratifying part is to listen to everybody here and how involved they are in their department, how they take ownership, how they drive it forward. You know, this used to be preaching to an empty church kind of thing, and now it's more projects are brought forward than we can get done, it seems like at times. So that's the most gratifying part, is all the people here talking about those projects.
But you deserve a Purple Heart. Just for the 911.
I got a whole team we can get this handle.
Okay, all right, thank you.
Yeah, so that wraps it up. So as you go through it, if you have any questions or suggestions or comments, obviously let us know. So we'll keep plugging away at this stuff, and then
All my notes.
the next formal one will be incorporated in the budget here, which we'll begin working on in the not too distant future, which is hard to believe again, but
God, we're just getting so much done, honestly.
this stuff helps. I mean,
Yeah,
these
you're moving boulders.
right, like Scott said, with the Blue Ribbon Committee plan and the capital plan and these plans, I mean, this helps keep us on track, and it's, you know, the process sometimes of developing the plans can be painful, but once they're together, they're lifesavers, and definitely let us know where we're at. And I mean, the departments, supervisors, everyone appreciates them, so it's good stuff.
Thank you. So, do I have a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
Motion by trustee Garner, second by trustee Bomas. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye.